So he makes this speech, and I wrote this out here, Cross of Gold, one of the most famous speeches in American history, the Cross of Gold speech. If you Google it, you can listen to it. But he says, upon which side will the Democratic Party fight? Upon the side of the idle holders of idle capital, or upon the side of the struggling masses? That is the question which the party must answer first, and then it must be answered by each individual hereafter. The sympathies of the Democratic Party, as shown by the platform, on the side of the struggling masses, who have ever been the foundation of the Democratic Party. It's a fight between Wall Street and Main Street. Barack Obama could have said this in 2008, and we all would have said, okay, it's part of his platform. So the Democratic platform in 2008 is very much like the Democratic platform in 1896, Wall Street versus Main Street. Then he says there are two ideas of government. There are those who believe that if you only legislate to make the well-to-do prosperous, make the rich better off, their prosperity will leak through on those below. The Democratic idea, however, has been that if you legislate to make the masses prosperous, their prosperity will find its way up through every class that rests upon them. You come to us and tell us that the great cities are in favor of the gold standard. We reply that the great cities rest upon our broad and fertile prairies. Burn down your cities and leave our farms, and your cities will spring up again as if by magic. But destroy our farms, and the grass will grow in the streets of every city in the country. There are those who believe we will only legislate to make the well-to-do prosperous. Their prosperity will leak through on those below. The Reagan tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts. That is exactly the argument that were made in favor of those tax cuts. That by giving money to the rich, it comes down and benefits everyone. This is an argument that's been going on since at least 1896. If they say bimetallism is good, but that we cannot have it until other nations help us, we reply that instead of having a gold standard because England has, we will restore bimetallism and then let England have bimetallism because the United States has it. If they dare to come out in the open field and defend the gold standard as a good thing, we will fight them to the uttermost. Bimetallism, free silver. We need silver and gold. We need more money in the system. Critics say that what they really wanted to do was what we call inflate things. So they want to add a whole bunch of money in the system, and we have this belief that if we add a whole bunch of money into the system, prices will go up. So imagine that you're a farmer, you have all this debt. If we inject all this money in the system and in fact prices go up, your debt payments don't go up, prices go up, all the stuff you sell is going to generate more money, you're going to be better off. Right? The farmers are going to be better off. The working people are going to be better off. Their wages will go up, but their debts won't, because we're going to inflate the currency. We're going to cause inflation on purpose. And that same argument that was made against the progressive movement back then is being made against people like AOC now, who said, look, we can spend all this money, we can borrow at the debt. It's the same argument. So again, the two sides of this argument from 1896 are playing out before our very eyes again here in 2019. That's 123 years later, we're still having the same argument. Then it says, having behind us the producing masses of this nation and the world, supported by the commercial interests, the laboring interests, and toilers everywhere, we will answer their demand for a gold standard by saying to them, you shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. And supposedly he said this in such a way, and he was, essentially putting his arms out and making a religious gesture while he's saying this, and he finished, and there's dead silence in the room, and he leaves, and everybody just stares and just watches him go. And it's supposedly one of these moments where everybody just can't believe what they've just seen and been through. Anyway, If this sounds a little like Marxism, it also sounds a little like Marxism, right? So all these things are complex and interesting and fascinating, and yeah. So a couple other things really quick. There's something we call Gresham's Law. Gresham was Queen Elizabeth's financial advisor, and basically he said that, laid out for us in this Gresham's Law, basically says if there's two kinds of money in the country, if there's counterfeit money and good money, people will hoard the good money. They won't spend it, and they'll spend the counterfeit money. So you have to protect your nation's currency from counterfeiting as much as you possibly can. Otherwise, counterfeit money will be the only money that flows around your country. So if you notice our new money, we put color. People used to take dollar bills and $20 bills and $100 bills and put them in color copy machines and copy them. We've made arrangements so that that doesn't work anymore, that the copy machines recognize money and won't copy it right. You can bleach. Don't do this. It's highly illegal. But you can bleach a $1 bill. You can take it and leave it in a bowl of bleach over the night, and then in the morning scan a 20 and print $20 on your $1. Most people recognize, and like the little pens and stuff that people use to recognize counterfeit money, that recognizes the paper. It's very unique paper that the money is printed on, that U.S. currency is printed on. So you can fake a lot of people by reprinting higher level denominations on $1 bill paper. There's anti-counterfeiting things in the money now to try to prevent you from doing that, but that's a very common, highly illegal tactic that people use. And there's at least 2 countries in the world that print fake U.S. currency, and on the list of countries that print fake U.S. currency are Iran, North Korea, and in fact Colombia. The Colombian army was printing U.S. currency for a long time. So we've replaced the 5, the 10, the 20, the 50, the 100. The 1 kind of stays the same because who wants to counterfeit a $1 bill? Everybody uses $1 bills to counterfeit, and again, highly illegal, uses $1 bills to counterfeit bigger bills. So a couple of quick things here. You will note that this is money from 1864, I think. 1861. It's money from 1861. Abraham Lincoln's the president. He's on the money. We used to do that. We don't do that anymore. There's a law now that says you have to be dead to be on money. But the point of that is that if we still did that, we'd have Obama money and Trump money and Bush money and Reagan. So we stopped doing that in the 1800s. We stopped printing the sitting president on our money and started putting other people on it. You'll know that this says pay to the bearer. So you can take this money to the Treasury, this bill here. It's 1861. It's before 1863 when we started doing the fiat money. So you can actually take this $10 to the Treasury and they will give you $10 in gold or $10 in silver. This is a $20 bill. You notice that it pays interest 5%. If you look right about in the middle, and again it's 1864, Lincoln's still on the money. 1864, interest 5%. This is a bond. But again, the financial system didn't exist for the government to borrow money by going through the normal financial system. So they would print up $20, and what you did was you held on to this for a year and turned it into the Treasury a year later, and you got $21 for it. If you needed to spend it during the year, you could spend it. It was spendable at $20. But really, if you held on to it and didn't spend it, you'd get $21 for it a year later. So we also experimented with paper coins, which were not very popular. This was actually the size of a postage stamp, and it's 15-cent bill. They tried, 1 cent and 2 cents and 3, and a whole bunch of different senses that we didn't have in coins, but people really didn't like paper coins. We talked about you print up too much money, and what you get is inflation. So here is, and I own one of these. It's worth about 50 cents. I own one of these. It's a $100 trillion bill from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, interestingly enough, Zimbabwe now has stopped printing their own money. And the official currency of the country of Zimbabwe is the United States dollar. Zimbabwe uses U.S. dollars as their currency. We help them do that. It helps keep their economy more stable, to have our money instead of trying to print their own money. $100 trillion bill. And there's lots of them. They didn't just print up 2 of these. There's lots of them. And that's because they were printing money, and they kept printing money and printing money and printing money. And what happens? You get horrible, horrible inflation, and you end up having to print $100 trillion bills. It happened in Germany in the 1920s. It's happened in Brazil. It's happened all over the world, where when we print way too much money, what we get is huge inflation. So you end up with a $100 bill. I promised to pay the bearer on demand $100 trillion for the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and he signed it. We don't really believe he would pay you $100 trillion if you brought that money in, did he?